All right, good morning. We're here together with Gene Calvetta from the real estate office at Remax, and also Joe is our special invite today who handles insurance as well as some financial planning. So, Gene, I want you to kick it off and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what's going on in the market.
Okay, well, I'm Jean Calvetto. Um, you guys know, but some people out there might not know. I've been doing real estate for 26 years. 9 years prior to that, I did property management and have run the gamut between, horse farms, commercial, senior developments, waterfronts, single family homes, and townhomes. And it's a crazy market right now. We're finding that there's a lot of buyers and not a lot of inventory.
Okay, all right. Well, today we're here at the Jersey Shore. We got a blue sky and it's a beautiful day.
Yes.
Um, you
Yeah,
know,
it is.
there's more activity in the market this year at this time than there was last year. So transactions are definitely up and improving. But now that we're having this beautiful day and everybody's getting out, the Jersey Shore has some different insurance requirements and needs, and we have a well qualified person to give us some information on that. And one of the topics that comes up a lot has to do with flood insurance. So, Joe, why don't you give us a little bit of insight here on flood insurance?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Again, my name is Joseph Gamales. I know my last name is impossible to pronounce, so I did that one for you. Owner of Gamales Insurance Agency. We're based out of Brielle, but I'm actually down in Ocean County area where New Jersey, there's a ton of flood questions, right? And right now, it's interesting in New Jersey because there's some areas that now are getting flooded that haven't before. So when you look at lender requirements, right, to close on a house, if it's an AE flood zone, which is a high risk, you need to have flood insurance to close, right? X zone typically is a lower risk flood zone, but and not required. So a lot of people think they don't need it. But in the last year alone in New Jersey, if you live here, right, we've seen a lot of crazy weather, and there's been a lot of areas now getting flooded that aren't required to have insurance. So making sure you got that coverage and just reviewed at this point in time is massive because it's makes a big difference in your overall protection.
Okay. Now, flood insurance definitely has requirements have changed over the years. And I remember many conversations saying, well, you may not be in a flood zone because there's no water nearby. I said, but there's actually flood zones out in Arizona in the middle of the
Oh yeah.
desert, and people don't realize. So that conversation I have all the time. But with your flood insurance requirements or flood insurance coverage,
Mhm.
there's different types of coverage and different sources that you can go to help these folks that have the need for flood insurance. So tell us a little bit about, who are the different sources to go to because you specialize in flood insurance.
Correct. Yes. And I represent multiple insurance companies. So I can do a little bit of rate shopping as well, but also making sure that you have the proper coverage. Because if you go straight through the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program, the max coverage you can get on the actual structure of your home is $250,000, right? Which some houses, that's not enough, right?
Right.
And it used to be, right? We talked about things changing. It used to be with an FHA loan that you had to use the National Flood Insurance Program. Now you don't have to. So you can go private flood, which has a lot more flexibility in coverages, and some companies go up to 5 million on the dwelling, right? So there's a lot more flexibility there. The other thing with National Flood Insurance Program is $100,000 of contents. That may be enough, may not be enough, right? If you live on a slab or if you're just on a crawl space and your whole house gets flooded, you may have more contents than that. So then again, you can either layer it together, the National Flood Insurance Program at the base and then private flood on top of that, or most clients have been opting out for the private because it's more advantageous overall coverage wise. And as long as you're with a financially sound company, there's really not much to worry about.
So
Right.
Joe, with our prices in New Jersey, there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing on the water for 250,000.
No.
Not even a lot. So
Yeah.
what are you finding? Like, how are people doing their flood insurance when it comes to buying a house? Because generally houses are at least 650 and up on the water, at least minimum.
Yeah, and then it's kind of a mixed bag because if someone's raised 9 feet off the ground, some clients of mine are a little less concerned about the flooding, right? They're like, well, we have to have, I mean, if 9 feet of water comes through plus, then we have bigger issues in New Jersey, which I get. I still recommend it because if you end up finishing that first floor, or if you do anything else, if anything happens structurally, you still need the coverage, right?
But isn't the first floor not covered anyway, generally, because it's considered a basement or where the garage
Basement.
is on these new
Yep.
structures?
So you got to keep aware of that too, because I live in a water community, and a lot of these houses that are raised, everyone finishes it down there, but you got to be very careful with what's actually covered on that first unlivable floor, right? But when you talk about if someone's not finishing that, it's just on stilts and pilings, and then you have 9 feet up, it's a hit or miss. You still need to have it because you're in an AE flood zone, but it's a lot cheaper if you have an elevation certificate showing that you're raised 9 feet. I just ran something for myself, and it was 1,600 without for the year. With a flood elevation certificate, dropped down to 500 for the year. Right,
Wow,
it's a
that's a big
big difference.
savings. Yeah.
So it's kind of a mixed bag of, do you need the coverage? How's the elevation? Where's your location? It's a mix. So
You know, a
really,
lot of
Can I ask
people,
another question, Gary? I don't mean to interrupt you,
yeah,
but I had this really crazy scenario happen the other day. So
okay.
I'm applying for a CO at the township, and this gentleman's at the next window from me, and we were in Brick, and he was asking the township if he needed flood insurance because he was taking out money or refinancing his loan, and they really couldn't answer him. And I was listening to the conversation because, of course, I was going to say, "Hey, I have a really good insurance agent you could talk to." But he said his property was in an X zone, but part of the corner was in an AE zone. So how would
Hmm.
something like that come about? Would he need flood insurance or would he not need flood insurance?
So I would say you go up to that guy and say, call me anyway, because I can run what they call a flood zone determination. And all I need is the address, and I can actually run the flood map to see exactly what comes in on that flood zone. So if it comes in majority X and just comes in X zone, even if that little portion's AE, it's going to be qualified as X zone. I would recommend, if there's even close to that of an AE flood zone, to still get the flood insurance if it's an X zone. But for requirement purposes, he wouldn't be required to have flood insurance.
you
So,
know,
but that's the flood zone determination is kind of like it's makes it black and white because you can have. I worked with a client last month that they had a previous owner that had a different flood zone, and then we ran it with the updated flood maps. There's a different flood zone which is more high risk, and then the rates are completely different, coverage is completely different, and they're like, "Wait, what is this?" I'm like, well, that was 6, 7 years ago, in the changes. So it's always good to make sure that that's updated and run that determination to kind of get a black and white answer.
And
well,
Gary,
Joe,
would you, knowing that you do mortgages, would he need, if he came to you to do a refi, would he need flood insurance based on a refi or a cash out?
I would say that there's going to need to be some coverage required. It may not be the maximum coverage, but there would be coverage that would be required. And then it is specific to the type of financing that they're applying for. But
Mm.
something that Joe mentioned is, the different risk factors involved, and that's the percentage of the risk factors need to be weighed out. And I know nobody wants to pay any more than they have to for insurance. I totally get that. But the one thing that we have to remember that even though the house may be raised, moisture goes up, mold goes up, grows up on the pilings. It grows up on the non-insured, partially finished basement floor. And so even though you're in a low risk category or part of the property is not in flood and part of it isn't, all those factors get weighed out when you're going to get a mortgage on the property because the water will or could come over from that little piece that's in the high risk area over to the house. And then, like I said, the last big superstorm we had this situation. People said, well, I'm on the third floor of a condo or second floor, I'm not going to get 20 feet of water coming in. Yeah, but there was water damage because the moisture traveled up through the building and people did have the mold issues and did have the moisture. So, Joe, you probably come in contact with that as well with coverage.
Oh yeah, yeah, and with all these different things going on, it's just making sure that you have that um, that proper coverage on there, the flood insurance, making sure that um, I'm trying to think with Sandy, that was the liability. Oh, that's what I was going with. Trust train of thought. So with Sandy, a lot of the things too with the hurricane deductibles, and I'm going over the homeowners a little bit, but a lot of people have that misconception of what's covered on there too. So
Mhm.
mold and hurricane and those things on homeowners has nothing to do with flood. So people think they say that hurricane deductibles, oh, it's covered. It's like, but if it's water damage, it's not covered on homeowners. So if you don't have that flood, even if in that low risk flood zone, you have nothing. You're out of
Right.
luck, right?
Wow.
So that's a huge misconception that a lot of clients I run into are like, oh, yeah, I don't need it. I'm good. I got it on my homeowners. I'm good. No, rainwater, tidal waters, anything that comes up from the ground, that is not covered on homeowners. Seepage that comes through the foundation, nothing. And that causes the other issues. So making sure that that's a conversation from the get is super important. And I just actually had this happen to a client of mine that's down in South Jersey, and he's been in an area that over 200 years there hasn't been a flood loss. 200 years. I have my notes, and he goes, Joe, I know I called when I called you. You told me to get flood insurance. It's an X zone. I know I didn't take it, but is there anything that's covered on this homeowner's policy that'll cover me? Because I just had over $30,000 worth of flood damage from on my house because it was what where we're at now. It's probably what about a month ago we had a huge rainstorm that everything
Mhm.
Yeah.
lavalette was under feet of water, right? And I'm like, I'm sorry, there is nothing. He goes, okay, just want to call you a peace of mind. I'm like, I can't even help you. There's nothing because he opted out of it, and he was in an X zone. $30,000 of damage. It's a lot,
Wow. Wow.
right? It would have been covered if you had a policy that cost him $300,
Wow.
right? So
Gene, I know that with every client that you work with, you're always overprotected. Let's say the big mama of your client, and you make sure that everything is taken care of. And that's how we got introduced here to Joe, because you're
mhm.
always looking out for the best interests of the clients. But going forward, Gene and Joe, people can reach out to you with any further questions. And Gene, how's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Um, you can text me at 732-616-4101. That's the best way to reach me.
All right, wonderful. And then Joe, how about yourself? Because insurance coverage is so important and everybody needs it. How's the best way for everybody to get in touch with you?
I would say to call my agency at 732-800-0741. So if I am in a meeting, my team can pick up the phone and schedule a time for us to speak.
Wonderful, wonderful. We all invite you all to get back in touch with us at any time. I'm Gary Fish from Seaview Mortgage. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
We're going.
Take care.